host Kim Davis. It is a busy sports week and it is only Tuesday. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We have a lot to get to today. Thank you guys for being a part of Chalk Talk as always. Remember, you can follow me here on Facebook and YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter at Kim Y Davis, and you can follow me on Instagram at kim.y.davis. Now, the Houston Texans have made a big move on yesterday. They gave Bill O'Brien the old, we decided to go in a different direction notice, and they fired Bill O'Brien as head coach and general manager. So the team is 0-4. So it was not a great start. Of course, losing the first two games, I talked to you guys about this. I said losing the first two games to Kansas City and the Ravens, those are arguably, two of the top 5 teams in the league. So not that you just write it off and say we should not win those games, but that was not so much the travesty. Going to Pittsburgh, another really good team, losing there, not terribly, awful, but not good because now you're 0-3. But losing at home to the Minnesota Vikings, who came into that game 0-3 also, that did it. And the way you lost. But I think it wasn't just the 0-4 start. We talked about that here. It has been a lot of the moves that have been made. Let me move some of these off. It has been a lot of the moves that have been made by Bill O'Brien as general manager. And the one move that people keep talking about, continue to talk about, is the decision to trade DeAndre Hopkins and basically get not much for him, or at least not nearly enough. They did get David Johnson. They got David Johnson. Not enough. It's not enough to give away one of the best receivers in the league and a guy that Deshaun relied on so heavily. What they were able to do and what they were able to create offensively was just not something you trade away. So whatever the other issues are with players, in terms of if there's any truth to personal issues, you got to decide what's more important, right? You're running a business. And so anyway, we're going to talk about all of that today. I've got Spencer Tillman. I'm super excited. You guys have seen him on the show before. It's been a while. We got Spencer Tillman joining us today to talk about not so much the firing of Bill O'Brien, because that's done, but what happens moving forward. So Romeo Crennel is the interim coach for the rest of the season, right? When you fire your coach into the season, you pretty much have to promote somebody from within, or go hire somebody who's not on a team, who's not working right now. It makes the most sense to promote somebody within your organization, right? It's just, talk about disruptive, to go and try to bring somebody in from the outside, hasn't had time to put in their system, your system, your personnel. So Romeo Crennel was the assistant head coach. He's been the defensive coordinator a couple of different times on this team. And he has also been a head coach in the National Football League, his days as a head coach with the Kansas City Chiefs. So he knows football. He will be able to run this team for the remainder of the season. We'll see what Tim Kelly is really made of, because Romeo, although he knows football, he's a football guy, he's a defensive guy, and so Tim Kelly, the offensive coordinator, will have to run the offense. And I'm sure that, let me be clear, I'm not saying that Romeo can't give any guidance about offense, but we will see what Tim Kelly is able to do with this offense the remainder of the season. So Spencer's going to come in. We're going to talk about how this team moves forward. And we're going to talk about options for coaches next year. I don't even know if Romeo wants to be the ongoing long-term coach of this team. But one of the names that pops up, the name that always comes to my mind, is Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator with the Kansas City Chiefs. So we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about the general manager portion of Bill O'Brien's position. What's going to happen with that? Yeah. One of the guys that Bill O'Brien brought in was Jack Easterby from the Patriots. He first came in as kind of I forget his original title, but, make everybody feel good guy. I mean, I'm not trying to diminish what he came in for. I don't remember his original role, but now I think he's like the senior executive VP of football operations. I'm surprised that they kept him. I think if you're going to move on from Bill O'Brien, and I'm not big on calling for people's jobs, but it seems like that also would have been a move to make. But Spencer is an expert. He is, of course, a former NFL player, a Super Bowl champion, and an NFL analyst. And so he's going to join us in about 15 minutes, about 10 to 15 minutes, and we're going to have a conversation. And I want to get his insight and his thoughts about it. Good morning, Wap Ahead. Yeah, Bill O'Brien being gone is just the beginning. You're right. It is just the beginning. Now let's see how the McNairs handle this situation completely. I say clean house and get rid of some of the horrible contracts on defense to start off with. So here's the deal. I think when you talk about clean house, and I'm going to step away for a second and adjust this light, y'all. I'm not gone. I'm still here. I just need to do one thing. It looks like there's not enough light. Okay. Oh, okay. That's a little better. It's, I think they should. I mean, I think when you talk about cleaning house, I think about that as it relates to a Jack Easterby, right? He and Bill O'Brien were hand in hand and in sync, lockstep and in sync with what they did. I mean, they worked closely. You heard him talk about it, him and Jack Easterby a lot. I think that's a move. Maybe the Texans wait until the end of the season. I'm not really sure why, but we'll see what happens in that regard. I agree. But here's the thing. This team, Bill O'Brien kind of mortgaged the future, right? He went out and made moves that were really about win right now. Because remember, they gave up 2 first rounds and a second round pick for Kenny Stills and Larry Tunsil. So in this upcoming draft, they don't have first round. I mean, they don't have a first and second round pick, When he got rid of Jadeveon Clowney, another move that I say was really personal and not so much about personnel. He didn't get great return on a guy that had been the former number 1 pick in the draft. And then we come to DeAndre Hopkins, and you just gave him away, right? And you got really nothing for him. And I want to call David Johnson nothing, but it's not the same. You don't give up DeAndre Hopkins, one of the top 3 receivers, arguably in the NFL, the best player on your team, and not get a first round pick. That's almost criminal. And so that alone would have been, to me, almost reason enough to be able to say, So to answer your question, and you talk about the contracts on defense, you've got to work within the cap. You got to see what you can do, see what you can move. I'm not sure which contracts you're talking about. I mean, the recent contracts, JJ has another year on his contract after this year. It may be an option next year. I don't recall. In the offseason, they did sign Whitney Merciless to a contract extension, and then they just signed the linebacker to an extension. His name escapes me right now. But, it'll be interesting to see what the philosophy about building this team will be moving forward. What will this roster look like moving forward? But one of the things I will say, and I'll get Spencer's input on it, I imagine he's going to agree with me on at least this point. This roster is better than 0-4. Now, I know, Bill Parcells that said back in the day, your record is how good you are. But this team is better than 0-4. And if you just watch them play, you got a sense of, not that they were quitting or giving up, but they were deflated, right? They were just deflated. And so we're going to see what happens. Hey, good morning. Good morning to my friend Kim Edwards-Williams. Okay, so while we're waiting on our guests to join us, you guys have heard me talk about Kim and LJ Williams before. They are the creators and founder of the product Jinka. And I want to tell you guys, I mentioned it previously, but their product is now in H-E-B stores. So you can go in, there are 31 locations from as far south as Lake Jackson, for those of you in the Houston area, and as far north as Conroe, as far west as Katy, and as far east as Beaumont, and a lot of places in between. You can go and find their product in the healthy living section. You can get the paste in 2 different sizes, or you can get the capsules. Listen, we are heading into flu season, guys, and so you need some I Love Jinka in your life. So I'm super excited about my friends, and not just the business that they've created, but the product they've created to really help so many other people. So I Love Jinka. Check it out. And here's another thing. If you go into an HEB store and they don't have it, they happen to be one of the stores that doesn't carry it, because they're in 31 stores at this point. You can go to customer service and request it. And say, listen, I like this product. I would like to be able to buy it here because this is the store I come to. Can you get it? And they can get it. So make sure that you go out and support, not just support them as a business, but get something good for your family. Start making sure that you're taking care of your immune system as we head into this flu season, as COVID-19 continues to run rampant. So I encourage you to do that. Good morning, Marcia. Welcome, welcome. It's good to see you. And, I changed the show and moved it back to my regular page instead of my business page, because I have more viewer here. So I thought I would just try that today. And I'm seeing some people I haven't seen in a while. Good morning, Deborah, Watson, Aaron. How are you? Welcome to Chalk Talk. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Carolyn. And yeah, if you want more information about Jinka, you can follow them. They have an Instagram page, they have a Facebook page, just I Love Jinka, at I Love Jinka, or you can go to the website at ilovejinka.com. So yeah, make sure you check it out. Good morning, Rainice. And Rainice said, is at her HEB in Spring. All right. That's what we call community, right? So make sure you check it out. You can make it. I'm going to have Kim and LJ on again. We can talk about ways you can, how you can make it in a tea. I usually make it in almond milk or in a hot tea. You can put it in apple cider or apple juice, hot or cold. And Okay, so I lost you guys for a moment, but we are back. That was bizarre. I hope that you are still here. Nothing like a little bit of technology. It's kind of like live television, but yes, I love Jinka. Check it out. Make sure that you, if it's not in your store, you can request it, and it can be added to the list. So congratulations to Kim and LJ on something they've been working on for the past 6 years. And they're seeing it now. They're now being able to share it with people all over the region. So congratulations to them. So we're going to get back to talking a little bit about these Houston Texans. Before we do that, there's another team in the Houston area that's in action, and that's the Houston Astros. In this weird COVID year of sports, everything got pushed back, which we would be in baseball season right now anyway. That's not so odd. It's odd that we are in the NBA finals, right? Where normally we begin ready to kick off a brand new NBA season. So in the finals, the Lakers are playing the Miami Heat, and the Lakers have a 2-1 lead in that series. But the Houston Astros are playing in the ALDS, the American League Divisional Series. They're playing the Oakland A's. They got a lot of offense in game one, especially from Carlos Correa, George Springer, Jose Altuve. They won 10-5 in game one. So game two is today at about 1:30, I believe, 1:30, 1:45 Houston time. And those games are being played in Los Angeles. Now, there are some games being played at Minute Maid Park, but that's the NLDS. So what they did was you are playing at basically neutral sites. So no one really has a home field advantage. And they are playing the National League Divisional Series at Minute Maid Park. Interesting times indeed, everybody, right? Interesting times indeed. But I'd love to know your thoughts about the Houston Texans. I was at the game on Sunday. My first time going to a live game since the pandemic kicked in, right? It was really, they were about 12,000 fans, 12,000. I think the attendance was announced at like 12,102. So imagine 12,000 fans in that stadium. Not a lot of people. And they were spread out throughout all three levels. It wasn't like just people on the bottom level. There were people even on the top levels at the game. 12,000 fans. But you could hear them. They were not happy with the product. They booed a couple of times. And, as much as people have been wanting sports to come back and have wanted to be able to actually go to a live game, for them to be there and boo, it really showed what they thought about what was happening with the product. So, let me remind my guests, a little nudge about him coming on today. I'm sure that he's doing a lot. I tell you, yesterday when I saw it when it came across my computer that Bill O'Brien had been fired. I was in a board call, on a board online call, virtual call on Teams. And I was like thinking, you guys got to speed it up, because I'm trying to be attentive and present here, but I got to manage this and see what's going on. And so yesterday afternoon at 5:30 with a press conference, but it was with Bill O'Brien. And then people, that was really big of him to say something. Yeah, he's done. Like, I would have much rather had heard from Cal McNair yesterday to say, this is what we envision for the team. This is why we decided now to make this move or something, but we never hear from Cal McNair. Like, I've never, ever had a conversation with him. And I have reached out to him through his communication staff and also personally, but I've never even gotten a response. So he's not that guy. I would have even rather yesterday if we could have heard from Romeo Crennel about, this is what you can expect from me the rest of the season. I mean, something, because the Bill O'Brien interview, which is why I'm not playing it, he's done. I mean, there's a new era, I always say, man, when you get that call or that email or something, I'm sure it's a phone call, that says, we decided to go in a different direction. Yeah, that's never, I'm sure that's never really a good feeling. But now it's all about the future and moving forward. It's just unfortunate that as I mentioned earlier, Bill O'Brien basically mortgaged the future of this NFL football team. They don't have a lot of things they can do moving forward to make this roster better. Now, let me be clear. I think the roster is good enough to be better than 0-4. I don't know that it's good enough to win a Super Bowl. It's not, but they're better than the record indicates. So I think that we will see. Whenever there's a change, especially this is early. I mean, we're 4 games in, and as quickly as the McNairs gave him all that power and made him general manager, they took it all away. So that's interesting. I don't know what the thing was, the final thing, but you got to know it's not just the 0-4. It's a culmination of things that led up to yesterday's decision. Good morning, Sylvia. My sister Sylvia has a birthday coming up this weekend. So in the interest, because we are in a pandemic, we're going to do a drive-by parade where you drive by and wave at her and get a little gift bag or something. So I'm excited about that. She's got a birthday. And then my brother's birthday is this week. And then one of my nephew's birthday is this week. Y'all, I got a bunch of Libras in my life. So y'all pray for me. Pray for me with these Libras. I love them, but they are something. So it will be interesting. This weekend, the Houston Texans will host the Jacksonville Jaguars, another team that is struggling, to say the least, bringing up the rear of the AFC South. And the Texans need a win. Like they've got to get a win. And they were so close on Sunday. There were some calls that you got to say, man, I know they want why they make that call? But we've been saying that the entire time that Bill O'Brien has been here. And then yesterday, the announcement from him that, I'm going to go ahead and be taking over the office or making the calls the rest of the season. Well, I don't know if that was a final. I don't know what it was. But anyway, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Bill O'Brien because he's not here anymore. Good morning, LaWanda Phyllis, my godmother, joining us. Good morning, good morning. I see that more of you find it easier when I am on this page, and so maybe this is where I will continue to host Talk and then share it to my other page because I get to see all of you guys, which makes me really happy. Even Sylvia says it didn't make sense to give him all that power. Yeah, I think that was the deal. I think a lot of people wondered why and how they gave him all of that power. Linda says, tell Lewis happy birthday. So it is interesting. So I don't know if you guys were watching the game on television, there was a shot where they showed Don Capers, the Texans' very first head coach, Gary Kubiak, the Texans' second head coach, and then Bill O'Brien. They were all the 3 coaches in the history of this franchise. Of course, Dom Capers and Gary Kubiak are both working for the Minnesota Vikings. They're both coordinators for the team that beat them. And Siobhan is saying, I'm sure having Dom Capers and Gary Kubiak coaching on the other sideline didn't help either. I'm sure the McNairs were reflecting on what used to be. That picture of all the coaches with McNair was priceless. Yeah. The loss to the Vikings, to the 0-3 Vikings, now they're 1-3. It was just, not good. Good morning, Bobby. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm glad that you guys have joined us. So the Texans they're off today. They're off today. And, I was having this conversation with a friend yesterday, Bobby. I don't think so. But hey, I have no idea. Like, I have no idea if that's even possible. Anything's possible. Like, I was surprised that they made Bill O'Brien the general manager to start off with. I was surprised about that. So I guess it is possible that he could come back. Anything is possible. He's clearly available. So we don't know. But let me tell you another name that I like. There are a couple names I'm going to mention. Of course, Louis Riddick. Louis Riddick would be a great move. I don't know him personally. I've just followed his career and his work, and I think he'd be, a good move for this football team. But there's another name, and his name is Malik Boyd. He is the director of pro personnel for the Buffalo Bills. Now, Malik is from Houston. Prior to being with the Bills, he spent many years with the Arizona Cardinals. And, we see that Buffalo Bills team has gotten it together. And so on the personnel side, one of the things also that, here I am talking about Bill O'Brien again, but as general manager, he made some changes with the scouting department and that whole staff. And so you're going to need almost a magician to be able to come in and do some things with this roster because they're limited since they don't have any early draft picks, right? When you don't have a lot of money under the cap or, to go out and just get free agents, you build your team through the draft. And when you don't have first round picks, it makes it really, really difficult. So, I don't know from the standpoint of, you guys are asking me about who they will bring in as the general manager. I brought in an expert to help us talk about all of it. Spencer Tillman is joining us now. You've seen him on the show. It's been a while. He's a friend and colleague, a former NFL player, a Super Bowl champion, and he's an NFL analyst. So good morning, Spencer. We appreciate you joining us today. Can you hear me, Spencer?
Good morning. Thank you. You're a master of many. You multitask.
So let me ask you.
Do you hear me?
I do. I hear you now. Yes. So let me ask you your thoughts. And I was telling the audience, I didn't want to spend a lot of time really talking about Bill O'Brien. I wanted to talk about what they do moving forward. But your initial thoughts about the move that Cal McNair made on yesterday for the organization.
Yeah. Well, I think in some ways it's predictable if you kind of an insider. A lot of times when you're talking about these matters, Kim, as you know, you may know things that others may not be privy to, or and you got to be careful because your perspective can be viewed as off or maybe lacking credibility. But again, you have to understand that decisions like this aren't made in a vacuum. They are made result of, a series of things that happen over time. And it may reach a fulcrum or a point where you finally pull the trigger and it looks like it's news to us, but it's not really news. If you understand the anatomy of how decisions are made and how people arrive at points where they're ready to make a tough choice, it's accumulative. So I know that sounds terribly mystical for people, but if you understand human behavior, I'm not surprised. People saying, weren't you shocked that he waited to this point to make this move when you traded DeAndre Hopkins? That was the time to find, maybe not so much. I mean, the power play had already been made by that point. And when you have that total control, you ride with it. And I think if you have a personality type such as Cal McNair, then I think you let the chef have the ingredients and you give them the kitchen and let them do what they need to do until what they start cooking doesn't taste good anymore. And I think that's kind of what happened in a nutshell.
So now this team has they've elevated Romeo Crennel as the interim for the rest of the season. What do you expect from this team? I was saying before, they're better than 0-4. I mean, I don't know that this roster is a championship roster, but they're definitely much better than an 0-4 team. They've got some talent. What do you expect this team can accomplish the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think Romeo's a known quantity, so I think the players will play hard for him. I think that if they're smart, they'll understand that the NFL truly does stand for not for long, and that if this is a long audition is what it is, particularly for new players. Everybody gets a mulligan in the year of COVID. We understand that. Not a lot of changes. And so guys were kind of grandfathered, and that's a relative term in NFL parlance because everything is measured in dog years. But they are, I know you appreciate that because you got a beautiful dog. So I know you appreciate that reference. But at any rate, these guys that understand that the league is different And this one mulligan that we got this year was because of COVID. And so a lot of people weren't able to earn jobs or compete in camp where they were traditionally. And so if you were on the bubble, we haven't heard that term being used this year, is because guys were kind of grandfathered into their positions, and it was really about getting on the field and just being able to play the game. But you have a little bit of awareness that where we are right now, when I say we, I'm talking about the league, and particularly the Houston Texans for this conversation. You better have your head on a swivel, because this is basically an audition, because whoever's coming in will have no obligation to Romeo or anybody else. And including Anthony Weaver, who obviously got a job as a result of the respect that Bill O'Brien had for him. And I think he's a great coach, young coach. But I think for me personally, the narrative that emerged with Bill that was problematic was you can't be afraid to hire people who are smarter than you are. The coaches that I've been around who've been highly successful almost expect their coaches to move on. They almost expect them. And, if you take even probably one of the greatest college coaches we've had in the last 50 years, Nick Saban, I've had conversations with Nick, and he said, look, I've lost 11 coordinators on both offensive and defensive side of the ball. I expect them to move on. But Alabama's going to continue to be successful because it's a destiny place. Everybody wants to come here. Our system won't necessarily change. It's only changed one real time, and that was in 2012 when Kevin Sumlin came in there and spanked them in Tuscaloosa. And then he went and got, Lane. And so they respond to that. But by and large, you're coming into a culture that's already set, and people are looking to get their PhDs of sorts by being in Alabama and go and move on. So by cultivating an environment where you anticipate that, I think it's actually healthy. It nurtures a sense of we're going to be better than we are today, as opposed to having tires. That is, people who are at a certain level. And, the old axiom is only few of us reach our full potential with only ourselves to emulate. And when it's the people that are elevating come from us, how can we have a reasonable expectation that there's more going to be there? And that's it. And that's not disparaging Tim Kelly, anybody who's been lifted up by Bill O'Brien. However, that was just one. If I have a critique, that would be it. I would put my head on a swivel and find the best, the most innovative people that are out there, and try to win and live with the results of their destinies.
One of the names that we keep hearing, and we talk about every offseason in recent years, is Eric Bieniemy. Of course, the offensive coordinator with the Chiefs. And would he be a guy? What could he come in and do with Deshaun Watson, and then building around what Deshaun's skill set is? We could talk about it, Eric Bieniemy, but before we do that, what about personnel? Because Bill O'Brien was also the general manager. What's going to happen in terms of who's going to be responsible for the personnel of this organization? They didn't make any. I don't know if that becomes Jack Easterby. I'm not really sure. But also, Bill O'Brien pretty much mortgaged the future of this team in terms of a lack of draft picks. So whoever comes in to run the personnel side to put together the roster has their work cut out for them.
No question. And Kim, you nailed really what is the essence of the challenge. I think you have to go back to a more traditional structure where you have this bifurcation between acquisition of talent. There has to be some symmetry there, because you have to agree that this is how we're going to do it, but you let somebody else have the weight of building and acquiring that talent, much like when Rick Smith was here. So I think that traditional relationship will be something that will be necessary if this team is going to move forward, because of the situation they're in as far as the salary cap is concerned. They're in the basement. I mean, they've got more money allocated than any other team, any of the 31 other teams in the National Football League. But yet you look at the future opportunity to reconcile that with future draft picks. You don't have high picks for the next couple of years. So that's a big issue. And so how do you fix it? It's going to take a creative mind, and that creative capacity is not going to come from a head coach who is saddled with that part of the game. That's too much to put on the shoulders of anybody in this given situation. Now, if you're on plane and you're moving and all the personnel is there and it's set, maybe a coach could come and do what Mike Holmgren did for a period when he was with Seattle, and others who have had that dual title. They had success and ultimately, led them to Super Bowls, at the Green Bay Packers when they had that dual capacity. But it's rare that you see that happen and even Bill Belichick doesn't really have in the strictest sense of the definition. He does have control over those parts, but he allocates some of those talents to other people. Although Bill Belichick is definitely has the final stamp on who actually comes in. But in terms of the heavy lifting, that's not something he's interested in.
So I've had people ask me before you jumped on, Spencer, any chance that the Texans would bring Rick Smith back in that role? I mean, I say anything's possible. Who knows? I would have never thought the Texans would have made Bill O'Brien the general manager. I'd be surprised, but I just can't call it.
Yeah. No, anything can happen. I mean, if you examine the anatomy of why he left in the first place, why circumstances that were created that caused his departure, whether they're medically related to his late wife or their power struggles or issues, whatever you decide and settle on as the reason for why he left, I think there's something can be said for the good that he did in his capacity, and without the burden of dealing with someone who you love and who you have been committed to for your adult life. Not having to worry about that, at least to that extent, would certainly free them up. And I know he's gone through a period where he's had an awakening of sorts and has come real close to his son and his family in a way that he wouldn't have otherwise. And that those bibliography and footnotes makes him better at whatever he's going to do, as far as I'm concerned. So anything out, I suspect it will be probably a more progressive move, a younger new face. I think they may come up. And they may go the proven route. I don't know. I mean, maybe a conversation with Paul about that. We'll see.
We will see. A couple names that I, was bouncing around. Of course, one name that comes up for me a lot is Louis Riddick. I don't know him personally, but his name comes up in these instances. But there's a young guy, I say young in terms of this position. He's the director of pro personnel for the Buffalo Bills. He's from Houston, Malik Boyd. And so, you think about, would they go that route? Because you're going to have to. Yeah. One of the things that we also know this happened is Bill O'Brien has made some changes with the whole scouting, department. And so a strong personnel guy is going to be necessary to work some magic in terms of improving this roster with the limited resources and options they have.
Well, no question about that, Kim. And that's another significant point, because you have to start at where you are. Remember, this league was created. The late Commissioner Pete Rozelle uttered that phrase, any given Sunday. And that's the backdrop of which all of these changes have to be made. This league is one of the rare places, and this is what makes sports so beautiful, that its intention is to create balance or equity for every single team that competes, right? I mean, they even found ways to govern themselves. They call it salary caps, prevent owners from gouging other owners, and to keep things balanced. And that makes it really unique. So what is the one thing that separates? If you've got access to the same personnel in terms of coaches, everybody's cheating off each other, running the same plays, running what works. The difference are the players. Players play the game. And so a person who can relate, because there is a bit of a recruiting process to a much lesser extent than it is in college, but there is the fit that's part of the evaluation process. It's on the most part, about 75% of it is more of a product of the draft and where you slide and what the needs of the team are. That's going to pretty much determine where you go as well. But there is that fit part of it, more so now in football than it ever has been in the history of the game, in my opinion. So that's part of it. So that reality play out in who you acquire to do those duties. I think it's going to be a very complex assignment. It's going to be an assignment whose success rests in, are you able to remedy this financial situation of being at the bottom of the basement in terms of salary cap and no wiggle room, zero, okay, and not having those big picks for the next 2 years? How do you remedy that? It's going to be two big moves within the next 4 to 6 months: your head coach and then your personnel guy. And there may have to be a couple of major trades after that to fix what's wrong, depending on how those aging parts that you've got money tied up in, play out and how they're moving about. And so it's a conundrum. There's no question about that.
Spencer, have you ever, and I can't recall, have you ever played on a team, and I'm guessing maybe no, where there was a change mid-season or early season? Because I'm wondering if you could help us, from a player's perspective, think about how they respond when they get the news that 4 games in, their head coach has been let go.
Yeah. Mid-season, obviously when Jack Party and all those guys got their walking papers after the 93, 94 debacle with Buffalo, a lot of good coaches, Jim Eddie, coaches got their pink slips, but that was at the end of the year, right? So everybody got their little green bags and went to lockers, put their stuff in it, and went home and sulked a little bit and tried to sort it all out. But there was Bud Adams raised the thing after that. San Francisco, we never have to worry about that. The succession plans were already in place, and the success is great. And even those Oilers teams, we had some instability with Jerry Glanville before Jeff Fisher came on board. I think anticipated some of that, and actually Jeff came after Pardee. So no, not in real time. I can't. We've had coaches who have position coaches or coordinators who have died, passed away, things of that nature. The late Bob McKittrick in San Francisco. But I think in those situations, when the head coach doesn't go, you elevate your level of play even to a higher. When a guy who is a lifer like a Bob McKittrick was, an offensive line coach or coordinator type personality, passes away, there's almost like he's an ex-Marine, there's a narrative that's created. And I'm telling you, there is a raison d'etre, a reason for being that just transcends everything, Kim, and it takes you to another level altogether. And so I've been in those situations before, but not like this. This is tough.
Of course, the team plays at home this week against the Jaguars, a team that's also struggling early. And the Texans just need to get a win, right? You could just tell the frustration after the game on Sunday from a JJ who just looked like, I don't know what to do. I'm doing everything I can, and I'm going to keep doing that. But I don't know. To a Deshaun who's like, I'm going to just, right. I love the game. I'm going to keep my smile. I mean, I know they have to do the interviews. I get it. But I can only imagine being asked those same questions over and over again. And when they hate losing more than anybody, more than those of us covering them, more than the fans. And so really wanting to say, we've got to right the ship. We can't just keep losing, and the ball's got to bounce their way. So hopefully they're able to do that on Sunday.
Yeah. When you have a perennial, when healthy, pro J.J. Watt searching for answers, then you're really in a conundrum, right? You have a guy who's when healthy, an elite player at the level that's up there near Lawrence Taylor and some of the others, if not equal to in his case. They're searching for answers, then you got some major problems. And this psychological part of it, Kim, where you're supposed to get this fix against an 0-3 team at the time, in the Vikings, who was coming off a disruptive week themselves with COVID issues all over the place. There's no way they could have the focus and the attention that's necessary to come off with a victory, but yet they go on the road and do it anyway. So the inner game starts to happen, right? And remember this about the inner game. The inner game cannot not be played. When you're sitting down in your quiet time, or you're sitting there, even at practice, in team meetings, wherever, the and it's playing real, and it's basically assessing everything that has happened this season, this week, today, and it's saying, you know what, depending on how loud and how strong your voice is, their voice is saying, man, y'all can't even beat the Vikings. The Vikings had COVID-19 outbreaks. They didn't even get a chance to get on the field. They came on the road and whooped y'all butt. Yeah. These kinds of negative narratives are going on in your mind, and to the extent that you can suppress that and compete anyway, will equal your relative success or failure. But the inner game cannot not be played. Now, the other argument is you're saying the first 3 losses that we had, were against teams that were elite teams, elite defenses in this game. So that's kind of reasonable and expected. So you explain that away. And then the other challenge becomes, well, even if we win the ones we're supposed to win, you're supposed to win those, or you have a better chance to win it. You never will assign a level of value to those wins that you would had you beaten one of those 3 juggernauts at the front. There's always this self-marginalization of your attainment. You say, well, you won, but so that goes on. People will never admit it, but it goes on. We're keeping score.
Yeah.
Who did you beat? But who did you really beat? Was a marginal. Yeah, okay, you beat the team you're supposed to beat. They're not very good anyway. So that kind of narrative goes on in people's minds. And we know it goes on in the folks, the minds of people who listen to talk radio and good shows like yours and others. But in the player's mind, not only does it go on, you got to fight and then execute even though it's going on. It's tough.
So Spencer, I want to honor your time. So when I call you, you'll come back. So before you go, you know, we haven't even talked about COVID this season. The Texans have not had an issue, you know, thus far. But we see what happened with the Titans, which just kind of spun out of control. And we see how it can derail things. What are your thoughts about the way the NFL system, and are you confident they can get through a year, make it through the season and finish it, you know, not being sidelined by too many of these COVID outbreaks?
Mm-hmm. Well, Kim, it's a gauntlet. It's a gauntlet, right? You go through the gauntlet, and it's really, it's always, even without COVID, going to be a survival of the fittest kind of scenario. You know, I've always been a firm believer, and I think it was Epictetus that said this. He said, the crisis doesn't make the person, it merely exposes who they really are. And I think that's true in this case, because whether you're talking about organizational capacity to deal with the changes that come your way, when a disruption happens, your relative ability to manage that situation is a reflection of your preparedness, right? I always believe that when you're in the crisis, the best thing to do is to learn. It's not about trying to get victories per se, because if you find in the throes of a crisis that you're not equipped to handle that, you're probably going to lose that battle. But how you go through it is as important as going through it. The sun's going to rise. You're going to get up in the morning. But if you get up having known that you complained your way through that whole process, you cussed a few people out, you did some things you shouldn't have done, and you know you shouldn't have done it, and you keep doing it and burning relationships that you got to repair 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks from now, instead of going through it with integrity and workouts, going at a higher level, competing, being nice to people. When you emerge on the other side, you're going to have the integrity that's required to truly appreciate what you have learned. And so I always believe that how you go through something is as important as going through it. We all are going to do it. You know, my missionary mom used to always talk about in the book of James, in life, you're going to have persecution. So what I want to know is, how do I manage that situation? I want to know how I deal with that. And that's about relationships. It's about personal ethos, ethics, how your conviction to work hard in tough times. I think it's all important.
Talking to Spencer Tillman, and one of the things that he speaks about and talks about and works on with people is leadership. And to me, that's what you're talking about. Whether it's personal leadership or leadership from the outside, all those things are a part of what makes a good leader. Do you think that any of the players went to Cal McNair to complain, or Cal McNair just said this is time to make this move?
No, I think that Cal and Janice are very empathic people. They are feelers. They are smart. I think that they feel, and particularly Janice. I remember her saying something to me at an event I was speaking at, and she was at. And you know what, Kim, I just looked in her face, and I know she felt everything I said in that talk. I spoke for about maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and the way she looked at me, it was like she was sending this beam through me. She said, I felt everything you said, and well done, young man. And that was it, though. It wasn't a lot of that. It wasn't a lot of that. It was just a knowing. And that sounds strange to a lot of people out there that don't have those kind of relationships with people. But, man, there's something about those kinds of things. And I think when people who are understated on the outside, like, you know, McNair was the same way. He would talk. I remember one conversation I had with him about a project I was working on, and he called me one day and said, you know, you're going to get a pushback on this particular part of the project from these people. And he says, here's how you need to handle it. And he laid out how I needed to handle it. And he says, when you get finished, come back. It's going to take you a couple of years to do it, and then we'll figure out where we are now, where we need to go from there. You're talking about mentorship. I mean, that was just a great blessing to hand. It's one of the reasons why I work with HBU, because they've got this leadership initiative that he started there and supported financially for a number of years, and it's still in play. That's something, that relationship that people would never know about on the outside, and that's the way he probably preferred it. But I have great respect for the And what may not be there in terms of the depth of NFL patina of the NFL people per se, they've got it in spades on the personal side of it. That's for sure.
Now I know you. People would say you're a football guy. I know you're much more than that. So the Astros are in the ALDS. They're being led by Dusty Baker, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. They're 1-0. Got a little brash after winning that wild card series, but wouldn't it be something if this Astros team could really go all the way? They won't have any games at home, so they would have to do it on the road, which would put to rest whether they actually are talented enough to be champions.
Yeah. Well, after losing Verlander, after losing all of those parts this year and the scandal, all of the stuff that happened, to set the stage for, there's no pressure on them. There's no pressure on them. What real pressure? What better way to play the game than to go on the road or to be in a situation where nobody's expecting you to win? I mean, you just, you pin your ears back and you go get after. We love competing in those situations. So I think the Astros are in a great place. And you know what? If there was ever a man in a position who has moved from scabs to scars and who understands what the totality of the struggle is all about, it's Dusty Baker.
Yeah.
Who else do you want leading a team like this who has, that's to me perfect.
If it's perfect. All right. My Cowboys fans are binging me. You got any thoughts about the Cowboys? We will listen. Is it just that the defense is that bad? What in the world is happening up in North Texas?
Well, the defense is bad. I think I tweeted to someone during the Texans game, and I used the term, there's one thing to be wounded, and there's another thing to be emotionally scarred. And when you're emotionally scarred, that affects you this game, and the game after that, and the game after that. I think every team has a hidden indices and a hidden number, let's just call it from 1 to 10, that is reflective of their collective capacity to handle crisis and to handle disappointments. And I think the Dallas Cowboys are probably at a 5 or a 4. And I'm generous there. And I think that's what their biggest challenge is, because you can watch it in the way that they play, how they respond physically. They've got talent, but they're not playing as a cohesive unit. Let's bring it back to our place. I think the Texans have a lot of talent. I'm looking at some of the creative defensive schemes. Amenahue down over the nose, Jacob Martin, smaller guy, backing out zone blitz combination, and you got this kind of mix that Kirk Cousins has got to discern really quickly and fast, and allows Whitney Merciless to get a sack. But that's creative stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're mess up when you see that, because you don't know who's coming. That's the beauty of a 3-4 scheme. So anyway, all those things come into play. But when you get stunned by something like that and you can't adjust to it, that's really telling to me. And every play leaves bibliography and footnotes, Kim. And as you look at a game and you're making notes, I'm saying, boy, this index of this team right now on character and how they respond is a 4 or 5. And that to me is always points towards victory and defeat. That to me is a more important statistic than turnovers, or should say equally as important. Because 92% of the time, if you look at the line of a game and you're trailing by 2 or more in the turnover category, you have lost. I can predict same thing with this index here. It won't be something that's a common index, but I guarantee you it's one of those hidden stats that makes this game what it is.
What do you expect to see from the Texans this Sunday, Spencer?
I think they'll be free. I think they'll play loose. I think they'll compete at a high level. I think Tim Kelly will feel emboldened. I think that you may see, I'm not going to say what I think they're going to do from an offensive standpoint, but I think it will align with the skill set of your quarterback in a way that unleashes his full potential and won't be shoehorned into a system or a scheme that limits him. And I would, I talked to Bill O'Brien this once and asked him about the default position, about using pace and tempo as a tactical advantage more. Now, you can't, when you use -1 in the first quarter on first down, you can't do it then, because all pace and tempo is designed to do is to, if you get ahead of the chains, is to put defense in what they call run conflict scenarios, where it's 3rd and 1, 2nd and 1, and when you're in those conflicts, you can afford to take a shot, or the defense doesn't know if you're going to run it or. So the personnel that they get on the field at those times, it really becomes a chess match. You say, okay, you got little guys, let's run power, let's do this. It's just like a chess match. The way that works is you've got to win first down. If you cannot win first down and put them in a run pass conflict scenario, then they're going to say, okay, what does the book say? It's 3rd and 6, you're passing. 3rd and 7, you're passing. You know, you're not going to run stretch play because I don't think you can get to the edge. Whatever it is, it becomes very predictable. The key is get out of that predictable mode, and you're going to have success. I think both respective coordinators, Weaver, Kelly, are going to find a way to open up their scheme. They're going to throw caution to the wind. I think this is going to be.
All right, Spencer Tillman, my friend, the Super Bowl champion NFL analyst, college football analyst. We'll have to come back and do a whole thing about college football because that's a whole nother conversation about what's happening with college football and how that will impact the draft and moving forward. I appreciate you, my friend. I'll see you maybe Sunday.
Yeah. All the time. Thank you, Kim. You're the best.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, everybody, that was Spencer Tillman joining us today. And I, as always, appreciate him. You know, there are people that you bring around that you just feel like make you infinitely smarter, right? Like you just know more about the game. So let me see something that's happening with my screen. Okay. All right, so I got in, I tried to get in something for you Cowboys fans. I see you, Tony Dale. Thank you for that compliment, Charles Lamar Drayden. I appreciate that. And it is, whenever I can have Spencer on, he always brings such an insight, his knowledge and about the game. And just, it's not just about football, right? You know, I always say my liking sports is not, it's so much more than just X's and O's. It's all that goes into it. And it's applicable in everything we do in life. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for being a part of the show today. I appreciate you. And please continue to follow me on all the platforms. Let me hear from you so that we can, if there are topics you'd like for me to cover, you know how we do. Send me an email, kim@kimydavis.com. I will work on those. And I will see you guys next Tuesday on Chalk Talk. But I'll also see you throughout the week on all my platforms. Probably do a couple of short things on Instagram throughout the rest of the week. And remember, do something kind for yourself and something kind for somebody else. Wear your mask. Practice social distancing, okay? And make sure that you're washing your hands. Hey guys, we're headed to flu season, and we need to really be vigilant about being protecting our immune system, protecting each other. COVID is not over. Regardless of what anybody says. And so take care of yourselves and take care of the people around you. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you next week. Thank you for being here. And remember, share the video. Thanks, Wendell, Luwanda, Sylvia. Thank you guys for being here. I'll see you next week.